Welcome in to the fun Astrology podcast. Thomas Miller, back in North Carolina. Thank you guys for letting me have a hall pass for the last couple of weeks. Oh, was that ever fun? And you know what happened? They left the door open one afternoon there and left me on the streets of Dallas. And I've got a story, but I'll tell it at the end. Let's get down to the daily business because we are sitting here sandwiched, really, in the shadow of Saturday's full moon. I flinched with yesterday there because that full moon was at 11:35 p.m. Eastern Time, which for me was way past bedtime. Then yesterday morning, Venus went retrograde, and tomorrow we have the winter or December solstice, winter above the equator, summer below. And then if this week wasn't eventful enough, then we have the nodes changing on Wednesday. Mary Susan, we will tackle your question then. She asked a great question about should we be concerned if it's going to aspect our own chart. So we'll tackle that on Wednesday. And then on Friday, never a dull moment, Saturn squares Uranus for the third time this year. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And actually on Christmas Day, Venus conjuncts Pluto. You remember at the beginning of this month, I said that I think December 2021 is going to be an energetic pivot point that we will be looking back to with much greater understanding down the road. I'm talking months and years, that we're going to look back at this month, this collection of energy, and point to it many, many times. So there are two relatively, quote-unquote, quiet days this week, today being one of them, and Thursday being the other. One primary aspect today, and that is Mercury trining Uranus. That happens at 3:18 p.m. this afternoon Eastern Time. So obviously whenever Mercury is involved, we talk about communication. Whenever Uranus is involved, we talk about something interestingly unique, and a trine gives it a favorable spin. It gives it a more relaxed, more cooperative spin. So today, there's this little window of energy in the sky above us that says that if you venture out on the plank a little bit extra far on putting a phrasing together that maybe normally you wouldn't use, you might have some luck with it. If that were a square, you would say, oh, don't even go there. But being a trine, you could say, you know what, roll the dice, see what happens. And we'll set up solstice tomorrow, the longest and shortest day of the year, depending on your perspective or your geographical location. Interesting, too, tomorrow that the sun and moon both change signs tomorrow, about 6 hours apart. First the sun into Capricorn, solstice, and then the moon moves into Leo tomorrow. Now, I'm going to do a really short version, and I'm going to do the astrology version of what happened last week. You want the details, I did a Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast yesterday that tells the details of this story. So I'm going to leave the in-between stuff to that, but I want to do the astrology part over here because it was very significant, and I absolutely used astrology to make this decision. So it came to a point here in the last several weeks, really it's been going on for the last several months, that the neighborhood where I am is too noisy for me to do what I want to do. Particularly, I really want to take this to nature. But anyway, just made a mutual decision with where I am here to go ahead and move on. And that opened up a conversation while I was in Dallas. And my son, who is a biomedical engineer, does nothing but solve problems all day, talked to him about it and wanted to get his feedback. And after thinking about it for a day, he looked at me on Saturday last week and he said, Dad, you should just be in an RV. Now, those of you who know my story know that I spent 2009 in a fifth-wheel RV, and it was the most pivotal year of my life. I thought I would be traveling more than I did. A job kept me closer to home base. But that was the year that I first ever looked at an astrological chart. It's the year that I learned that we create our own reality instead of blaming it off on a bunch of other people. Well, I listened to my son, and of course, my heart just jumped and leapt for joy at the thought of it. But then I started to think practically about how would such a thing be pulled off. And I was trying to think of how would I do my audio and my audiobooks in what is going to be a noisy environment. Well, I think we've got a plan that just might work. The details of that plan are over in the other podcast, but I wanted to tell you what I was doing here. So, like I said, they left the gate open on a last Tuesday afternoon, and I went RV shopping and actually had been given a tip to go to this one particular dealership. And as I was looking at this particular Sprinter van that I ended up getting, I was on the phone with Brittany, and I was like, oh, got to cast a chart, horary chart, and ask the question, should I buy this van now? Asked a specific yes or no question. And as I looked at the answer where that question appears in the chart, the answer was clearly yes. The sun was in a sextile to Saturn, and those were the two planets that were answering the question, basically. Then I started reading the chart, and that was when my lips started quivering and my eye got a tear, because I've always loved the idea of the freedom of the road. I mean, it's in my soul. But when this came together, first of all, with a Gemini rising chart, which is my rising sign, knew right then that this chart was harmonizing with me in this decision. Communicating a message out. Then my eye very quickly fell to Jupiter conjunct the midheaven. And in a horary chart, you can move within the entire sign. They are both in Aquarius in this chart. Jupiter on the midheaven. As I am in the process of growing this business, that's just a blessing right there. In the 9th house of spirituality and of publishing. Neptune in Pisces, just like it is in my own chart, in the 10th house, doing astrology, doing a spiritual career. And then the Sun and Mercury were both in the 7th house, even though they were in different signs. The Sun in Sagittarius in the 7th house, partnership. Well, as I'm traveling around the country, which I'm going to do this time, I'm going to be creating astrological partnerships all over the United States, talking to astrologers, doing courses, I hope I can work this in, doing local readings. In other words, taking the message out and building local partnerships and communities across the country. Wow. And then the last one, and this is where I really teared up, is the moon in horary astrology, is the co-significator. In other words, it's kind of the second shadow asking the question, is in the 11th house. Large groups of people. Now, see, there is a Mercury, Trine, Uranus podcast, if ever there was one, right? Did you ever expect you would hear that when you tuned in this morning? Mercury and Uranus communicating a, unique message and what's going to be a unique journey. And we're going to all do it together. We're going to capture it on video. This whole thing is getting ready to just expand, and it's going to have a great storyline with it, too. The travel piece is going to be so much fun. All right, for this week, what's the game plan? Lots of rope for everybody, because we're all feeling this energy. It's been heavy all month. It's going to be heavy this week. So just give people slack, all right? Have a great day. I'll see you back tomorrow. Sending you love. Bye-bye.